Hey guys, so about 6 weeks ago, I ranked the Marvel Phase 1 movies. Well, it's 6 weeks later, and now I've got Phase 2 for you. I just want to say off the bat, it's been so great watching these over again, just especially doing it 1 week at a time, just because you learn more, you kind of just let each one settle and think about, the what's good about it, what's if there's any bad about it, the characters, just the development of the whole universe, and it's just a lot of fun, and I really recommend you guys do that. Obviously, you have worse timing than I do because my friend and I picked this at a perfect time, and we both just agreed that it's been a fun journey. So now I present to you Phase 2. I also want to just point off the bat, I do like all of these movies. However, there is a jump in quality from my first entry to my second entry. And then as before, no spoilers, and I am doing these from worst to best. So first off, we have Thor: The Dark World. Now, the Thor movies have always kind of been the weak point of the series. I love Thor as a character. I think Chris Hemsworth brings a lot of charisma to the role. However, this movie is just very lazy at parts. The villain is very weak. There's some good moments between Thor and Loki, just like as there was in the first one. But unlike the first one, the scenes in Asgard were a lot better in this one, and the scenes on Earth were kind of lame. Whereas in the first one, I loved the scenes on Earth, and then the scenes in Asgard were kind of weak. And I kind of like that they switched that around, although the finale is pretty cool. The villain really kills it for me. It's just not a good development in the story. However, I do like the end credit scene. So next up, we have Ant-Man. Now, Ant-Man was another one of the characters that I literally had no idea who he was. Um, I'm sad that we never got Edgar Wright's version of Ant-Man, but I mean the director of this one here, Peyton Reed, did a great job, and I honestly think that Paul Rudd was probably the best introduction into the MCU. I didn't really think that he could pull it off at first, even though I love him as an actor, but the character's just kind of that sarcastic asshole, but he's a likable asshole, and he just really kills it. It's also got one of the better villains in my opinion. I know I'm kind of the minority in that one, but I just think he was a little bit menacing. And of course, the final battle scene is awesome with the Thomas the Tank Engine thing. That was really cool. And it's a good backstory, like I guess origin story. The powers are a lot of fun. And it's one of the funnier entries in Phase 2 and even Phase 1 as well. Next up, we have Age of Ultron. Now, Age of Ultron, of course, is the second Avengers movie. It brings everybody back together, and it's awesome. It definitely has one of the better villains of the series for sure, in the form of Ultron, voiced by James Spader, and the fact that basically the whole thing was set up by Tony, and it introduces Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who is one of my better, or excuse me, one of my favorite characters in the MCU now. Definitely like her powers a lot, and Elizabeth Olsen just really nails the role. She's a lot of fun. There's the whole weird kind of relationship that went on between Bruce and Natasha, Black Widow and Hawk, I guess, and that was a little weird. I didn't really like what they did with Barton with Hawkeye, his little side story, but it gives the characters more dynamic since we had gotten used to them at this point, and they're just working together to try to stop Ultron, and then it really leads into Civil War, which I'll get to in my Phase 3 video. But I like it a lot. It definitely further explains the story. The new characters are great. The Hulkbuster suit was awesome. I remember seeing that in theaters and everybody just flipped out upon seeing that. And then, of course, there's the very early scene with everybody kind of drunk and trying to pick up Thor's hammer. And that's a lot of fun. Just the characters sitting around having a good time, basic, and Thor just being like, "Ha, you're not gonna get it. You are not worthy of it." And I think that was really cool. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, my next two entries were really hard to choose from. However, the next one I'll explain. But Guardians of the Galaxy might be one of the biggest surprises of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Simply because nobody, unless you read the comics, the general public didn't know who the Guardians were. I sure as hell didn't know who they were. And they basically, as everybody worded it, Marvel took these D characters and basically turned them into A-listers because now everybody loves them. And they have every right to. It's probably got one of the best chemistry between casts. You know, we've got Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper as Rocket, and then Batista, who had proved that he was actually a great actor and really funny. I really like Drax a lot, and just the chemistry between the characters, it brought a different sense of humor to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. Probably is one of the funniest movies in the series, as well as the second one, which I think was actually pretty funnier actually. But either way, they really hit the excuse me, they really just nailed it with that. The characters, the story, the villains, you know, more of Thanos. We've got Michael Rooker as Yondu. Even Glenn Close and John C. Reilly show up. And really, the best part about it, the soundtrack. One of the greatest soundtracks of all time. And then the fact that they actually released it on cassette was pretty friggin' cool. Kind of that nostalgia and just how serious Marvel was about this movie. And just everybody went kind of apeshit over it. And it was really cool because the soundtrack is great. You know, it opens up to Redbone. There's Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Bart Black, Hooked on a Feeling. Just really cool. The dance, you know, Baby Groot at the end, just dancing and just going. It's a lot of fun. But next up we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, like I said, this was a really hard choice, but I give this one the slight edge simply because I think it was more grounded. It was just a little bit different from the rest of the Marvel movies, I'd say, as it's more political, it's kind of more story driven, and it's not just full of action for entertainment. It, you know, develops Steve Rogers more, his relationship with Natasha. We finally meet Bucky again, the super soldier. We get introduced to Falcon, who, give or take, isn't really one of my favorite characters, to be honest. It's just I'm not really a fan of his powers per se, and he's just kind of basic. But it's just you know, the story. Robert Redford is great in it. There's the scenes, you know, with the actual on the highway. Nick Fury actually gets more to work with. I thought that was really cool. And, you know, it doesn't rely on humor. It's just story driven, government, dark, just really deep. And it doesn't rely on any of that to make it entertaining. And then next up, we've got the biggest surprise, and that is Iron Man 3. Now, Iron Man 3 probably went from being my least favorite of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and now it's my third favorite after the first Iron Man and the Avengers. Now, I don't know what it was before that made me not like it, but whatever it was, I think it was mainly just like the story, how the tonal shift, I guess, from Jon Favreau, but that's what made me love it even more this time. It's very dark. You know, it follows basically the struggle of Tony realizing, you know, what he's done as a character, how his kind of health is deteriorating, and it's just really, really a dark story. It's deep. It's and I really just like Iron Man a lot. I know a lot of people were pissed off at the big, I guess, reveal of the villain and how they kind of killed the Mandarin. Um, I really wasn't bothered by it. I don't really know much of the character to begin with, but watching it again, the story just really stuck with me, and I ended up really loving the character. And he was very, you know, menacing. And then, of course, going after Pepper at the end was really cool. There's the whole scene at the construction site, and then the middle of it, you know, Tony and that kid kind of just helping him, being his little sidekick. It's just really cool. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't rely on humor. It's just a great story-driven movie. Probably the best story in the entire series, I guess, the franchise. But that's it. That's Phase 2. Once Infinity War comes out and I review that, I'm gonna go with Phase 3 simply because the next one's not coming out for a while after that. and it'll be, I believe, 6 or 7 movies, so it'll be just about the amount of this. So keep a lookout for that. I have a feeling Infinity War is going to take over take the cake on this one, but we'll find out in a couple weeks. Take care.